GBLS UK reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do a long-term review on a lone replica. When I asked if there'd be any stipulations, they just wanted me to be honest, so I will. They also supplied 5 magazines and the batteries that I would need. It's now time to send it back and to finish off the review. There are several options in the GBLS DAS range. There's an early type HK416 style short barreled rifle, the GDR15 CQB with a 10.3 inch outer barrel, the GDR15 CQB skeleton kit that comes without furniture apart from the pistol grip, and this model. We've put it through a battery of tests. We test it against other full function recoils. You may have seen those already on the channel. We checked out its maximum and effective ranges. Next, we assessed its accuracy and found out what it was like to play with. It's the most comprehensive test we've ever done on AATV. The GBLS DAS could be considered a hybrid of an AEG, Springer and GBBR. It has features coming from all 3 types of operating system. This makes it pretty much unique on the market. The gearbox itself is almost entirely proprietary. It breaks down similar to a real rifle. You simply push out the rear takedown pin and pivot. This gives you access to the lower receiver and gearbox, as well as the bolt carrier group, buffer and the charging handle. The gearbox is contained in the lower receiver and has its own fire control unit. The air compression parts are contained within the mock bolt carrier. This looks extremely similar to a real one and massively adds to the realism. The gearbox pulls back on the piston contained within the BCG. It's then caught at the rear of the travel by a sear mechanism like those used in spring rifles. This gives extremely fast trigger response, something that adds to the accuracy due to the reduced lock time, as well as allowing you to get snap shots off. When the replica fires, the BCG and the piston are rapidly pulled backwards into the buffer tube, causing the recoil. The piston is caught by the sear and the BCG returns into battery, chambering a BB. Before you fire a shot, you have to cock the action manually by using the charging handle, like a real AR. Users of GBBRs will be familiar with this, though you may find it harder to pull as you have to overcome both the buffer spring and the piston spring. This leads to another feature where it's possible to use the GBLS entirely manually if your battery fails. You just have to recock it after each shot. Speaking of batteries, the GBLS DAS requires a good 11.1 volt LiPo for it to operate properly. In my case, GBLS UK supplied 2 11.1 volt 1300 mAh 25C batteries for the review. The magazines feed like a GBBR or GBB pistol, where the nozzle strips a BB as it goes forward, but they're much lighter as they don't need a gas reservoir. They take 60 BBs. The BCG locks to the rear like a real AR after the last BB is fired. I can't remember a failure to lock back during testing. This feature is, in my opinion, the best of the GBLS, and it's what adds most to the immersion. Reloading a magazine and hitting the bolt release sends the bolt home in an extremely satisfactory way. You can also feel the difference when firing between the BCG locking back and it going into battery. You know the replica has gone dry rather than just having a dead trigger like in a TM NGRS. The trigger, as we've discussed, is mechanical and has a good feel. Earlier models were heavier to pull, but this one is lighter. They're still much harder than my GHK GBBR. However, once I was actually shooting, I didn't really notice the weight at all. And I've grown to quite like it, to be honest. And my AEGs now feel totally dead and unresponsive. The hop is reached through the upper receiver and is adjusted via a small hole in the barrel extension. This is a bit of a pain to get to, even with this extended Allen key. To make big adjustments, you really have to split the receivers and remove the BCG. To make small adjustments, you could access the hole through the ejection port, but it's probably wise not to do this due to the risk of damage if the bolt accidentally goes forward. To be honest, this is a bit of a faff, so once you've settled on a hop setting and choice of ammo weight, you won't really have to go back to this very often. The platform could be improved by making hop adjustment more accessible. However, I wouldn't want to detract from the immersion and the looks by doing so. Power is easily adjusted by changing the mainspring. This is done by popping out the BCG and removing these two bolts holding in the spring guide. Simply replace the spring with a new one and add some blue Loctite to the bolts and replace. This model is the US civilian style GBLS DAS GDR15, featuring PTS licensed furniture and accessories. It wouldn't be my first choice of model, but more of that later in the episode. So let's go tip to butt as usual. We start off with a PTS BCM battle comp sitting on standard Airsoft 14mm negative threads. The handguard is a PTS Centurion Arms CMR V2 rail. It features pick rail at the 12 o'clock and M-lock at the 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock positions. There are QD sockets on both sides, one near the back and the other up by the muzzle, giving you loads of sling options. For my testing, I've mounted a Magpul vertical grip and an offset light mount to the rail. I have also had a Magpul M-lock bipod on without any issues at all. The rail attaches to a standard AEG thread upper receiver. As this is a loan item, I haven't tried to mount another type. The PTS gas block is held on with a set screw and has a rifle length mock gas system under the handguard. Moving back, the upper and lower receivers are beautifully made from aluminium. The fit, finish and build quality is as good as you would expect for the price. I've been thoroughly impressed with them. They are of the normal flat top AR-15 forged style, which is great for those wanting to make military replicas. However, the trades are heavily embossed into the lower receiver, which is frustrating for cloners, as they would probably need to be filled in before adding your own choice of logo and markings. The GDR416 and the CQB skeleton kit have virtually blank lowers, and blank lowers are also available separately. There are a couple of different types of magazine available, a steel GI version and a polymer style. The metal one takes 60 BBs, the polymer has an adjustable capacity of 20, 30, 40 or 60 BBs. I would love to see GBLS introduce the variable capacity into the steel mags to make them even more realistic. These metal mags have a grippy phosphate style coating, are light and cost around £30 to £35 depending on where you get them from. The controls are where you expect to find them on an AR-15 replica. The charging handle is of a mil-spec type but can be replaced with real steel items. The bolt release is a familiar ping pong style and is single-sided only, as is the fire selector. The fire selector clicks into place and flicks between positions with some authority. It's a real pleasure to use. We've talked about the trigger earlier. It has a curved mil-spec shape and is a single stage. There is no real discernible creep or take-up. The brake is a little wooden compared to the crisp nature of my GHK trigger, infinitely better than any AE trigger I've ever used, and it also has a positive reset for quick follow-up shots. The pistol grip is by PTS and is well moulded with quality polymers. The receiver end plate features another QD socket. The collapsing stop tube has 6 positions. Functionally, the PTS EPM stock is excellent. It has absolutely tons of space for batteries and a firm lockup. I've also been storing the speed loader adapter in this space at the back. Pretty handy. The stock also has 2 extra QD sockets, one on each side towards the back. The GBLS DAS likes hard ABS type BDs. It does not generally get on well with bios, which tend to be a little softer. We've had good success with Red Wolf Airsoft Surgeon, ASG Devil and Precision, Valkyrie and BLS BBs. You will also normally need to use a relatively heavy BB as well, a minimum of 0.28 gram at UK power levels. I've personally been using 0.32 and 0.36 at around 1 joule, or the equivalent of 330 FPS with a 0.2 gram BB. So enough of me talking, let's go over to the range, accuracy and gaming sections of this review. So to continue our review of the GBLS DAS, we've come to Thurlaston Airgun and Archery Centre to test the maximum and effective range of this replica. To do that, I'm going to use these electronic attack sense targets that flash when they're hit by a BB, so you can see and I can see when I've struck the target. So today we're going to have the targets out at 65, 60, 55, 50 and 45 metres. Let's get going. So we've got our targets out at 65, 60, 55, 50 and 45 metres. We pretty much know what this does. We've already tested it in one of the recoil battle videos, but we want to do a dedicated range test with it as well, just to make sure. So we've clustered the target around the maximum and effective range that we saw earlier. So today we're going to use ASG Precision 0.36 gram BBs This replica seems to really like them, so that's the weight we're going to use. We have tried some other weights, but this seems to be the best balance of distance and range and accuracy for the GBLS DAS, certainly at the power it's at. Okay, so let's do a quick chrono and then we'll get on with the range test. 257, error, 252, 259, 261, 255, 249, 253, 254. So it's about 1.1 joules. So very happily skirmishable. Okay, we're going to get going. So aiming for the 45 metre target. Just about effective at 45 metres. Let's move on to the 50. So certainly if it wasn't for the gusty wind, that wouldn't have been any trouble hitting 8-9 times out of 10. With the gusty wind, we're down to about 50%, but I'm pretty confident I could hit a man-sized target at 45 without any trouble. So on 50, and this is the best bit. Love it. So we're effective at 50, we're going to move on to 55 metres. So it's pretty gusty today. I got a bit of a lull in the winds. When I got that lull, I hit the 50, no problems at all. That one's not going off. I can get the occasional hit on the 55, but I can't get them consistently. So probably 1 or 2 times out of 10. So I think the effective range today is 50 metres, and now we'll go for maximum range. Joe's just back from downrange, which has been spotting fall of shot for me, and the maximum range on this day at 1.1 joules is about 65 metres. They're landing just at the base of the target, and the effective range was about 50 metres. Pretty good performance. It's been a bit gusty today, but I reckon that's pretty fair, and actually battlefield conditions would dictate you don't get a completely straight shot anyway. So we've come down to Inrange, a new facility just outside Birmingham in the UK, which is one of their fantastic indoor 30-metre airsoft ranges. And it's even got these targets that you see in the movies that go back and down the range on command. So we're going to zero and then accuracy test GBLS DAS at 10, 20 and 30 metres. Okay, let's get on with it. Okay, so we've just been zeroing GBLS, only for windage really. We'll get elevation when we go down to the 30-metre mark. Try and get it in about the right place. I'm using ASG 0.36 gram BBs, and we're firing it 10 metres because that just makes the maths a bit easier. Okay, let's shoot some groups. All right. So this was our first group. We brought it across, needed a touch more, bring it certainly in line. So just shot this one maybe a little bit left biased, so I'm just going to put a couple of clicks to bring it back. Looking really good. Right, 20 metres, let's see how we get on. Yeah, about 70, 80 mil, so that's about double what we got at 10 metres, at 20 metres. That makes a lot of sense. You can see we're shooting high this time. Last time we were shooting low at 10 metres, this time we're shooting high at 20. So we're going to put a fresh target on and go for 30.
Long way away, isn't it?
It's a long way away. So we've just got the target out at 30 metres. Let's see what the GBLS and me as a marksman can do. About the widest group I can find is about 13 centimetres, which is about 3 times what we've got at 10, which is what we really should expect at 10, 20, 30 metres. So at 10 we had 40, at 20 we had 80, and now we've got 13. So about right. Much of that will be me as a shooter, but it shows you what we want to do. Now I'm going to drop this group down. 30, 31, 32. Okay. Cover back on so we don't lose it. Okay, so we're going to do our last group to sort the elevation zero out at 30 metres. 30 metres is a pretty typical airsoft engagement range, so that's where we're going to set our rifle for. So I'm not going to measure this group because I was going a bit trigger mad, but this group here very happily centre mass at 30 metres. I know if I get my donut of death in the vortex scope on the target at 30 metres, decent marksmanship, I'm going to hit them. Simple as. So people that say airsoft guns aren't accurate, well I think that's plenty accurate enough at 30 metres to be sure of a shot. So, if you've been with me all this time, what you really want to hear is, what do I think of it? Well, if I'm honest, I kind of thought I wouldn't like it. I remember not being that impressed when we first tested one back in 2018. I don't know if there have been changes, but I suspect also that my preferences have also changed in the meantime. I've been using both a TM NGRS and a GHK GBBR extensively over the last couple of years, as well as valuing realism and immersion more in my gaming these days. So, I really like it. I'm pretty sad that I have to send it back. For me, it's a fantastic mix of the best elements of the TM and the GHK. It has most of the convenience of an AEG, but with much of the recoil and realism of using a GBBR without many of the faffs and drawbacks. You don't need to take various gas cans to a game or swap nozzles to stay within limits. The mags need very little maintenance and you don't have to worry about leaks. It doesn't kick as hard as my GBBR, but it does recoil more than my TM recoil. It's comparable to a good KWA erg, though the impulse is generally sharper on the GBLS. I've talked to a few people now who have all used it alongside several other recoil replicas. We've actually all come to pretty much the same conclusion. The GBLS DAS is for the player that only really wants 1 or 2 replicas, has a big budget, or has one primary modern loadout and wants to get the most from that selection. It's also perfectly good out of the box, though it really should be, for around £1,600. It makes very good competition for a heavily upgraded TM recoil, and I honestly think the GBLS DAS is a better choice. So would I buy one? Yes, but with a couple of caveats. Not this one. I would get the CQB skeleton kit and make a Mark 18 Mod 1 out of it. The other caveat is that probably not while I'm still YouTubing, unless I manage to get an absolutely killer deal on one. I do too many loadouts and too many historical eras to specialise into having 1 or 2 replicas. I don't have an unlimited budget. If I only did modern NATO loadouts, I would seriously consider selling a lot of my airsoft collection and investing in a GBLS DAS. It's a lot of fun to use, it's immersive and rewarding. I like it a lot. Maybe you will too. Thanks for watching this episode of AATV, all about the GBLS DAS GDR15. If you'd like to help this project stay as independent as possible, you can join our Patreon scheme and get early access to our videos. If you'd like to help in a one-off way, why not drop by our t-shirt store at Teespring and pick up one of our fantastic t-shirts. Please like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Oh, sorry, you okay?